Well, for more on how China's vaccine rollout is going, I'm joined by Dr. Peter Chin Hong. Dr. Chin Hong is an infectious disease specialist treating COVID-19 patients. Good to have you, and we appreciate the work that you're doing there.
Thanks so much, Rachelle, for having me on.
So get us up to speed on where China currently stands in terms of vaccinating its population.
So on the surface, Rachelle, it looks like China is lagging the percentage of population that it's vaccinating compared to the United States and the UK, for example, by about fivefold. So about, in China, it's about 10 per 100 vaccinated. In the US and UK, it's around 50. But China is catching up very quickly. And the real question is whether or not they can use a combination of a carrot and a stick to help vaccinate the remaining parts of the population in the rate that they would like to.
So then to that point then, what has gone right so far and what has got wrong or needs a different approach in terms of the rollout?
Well, what has gone right is really the sheer power of the vaccine technology and industry in China, having 5 vaccines approved and the millions and millions of doses produced. I think some of the enhancements that could be made is really in convincing the people that the vaccination is right. I've been surprised personally that people in China have been as hesitant as they have been about the vaccine. It may have to do with what you just mentioned, the fact that China doesn't have that much COVID anymore, so it doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency in the population anymore.
And it's interesting because in some regions like the US and Europe, you're having large pockets of vaccine hesitancy, but it seems to be for a different reason. As we mentioned, the Johnson & Johnson news also giving people some pause. Is that also happening in China in terms of any sort of fear about vaccines?
Yes, there's a lot of fear about vaccines. I think people are very savvy. They're seeing things reported on the media, certainly also the reports from the West. And of course, any vaccine-related side effect, particularly clots in AstraZeneca and J&J, are being viewed by the Chinese population as not just specific to AstraZeneca or to J&J, but to vaccines in general. So I think that combined with sort of like, being ambivalent about whether or not it's something that's worth really undergoing that risk for is really leading to part of the problem.
So then what can the central government do to either allay those fears or perhaps get more information out there and team up more with the scientific community?
I'm seeing a move in the Chinese government from being more carrot-like, meaning, buy one ice cream, get one for free, to being more heavy-handed, which may be appropriate if you think of it as a public health urgency issue. So like in the US, like in discussions in Europe, there is talk about having mandatory vaccines for certain segments of the population, certainly healthcare workers, in schools, etc., and that might lead more people to get more vaccines eventually.
And we have seen that Chinese vaccine manufacturers have yet to release detailed data on their vaccines. How is that affecting hesitancy in the population?
Yes, I mean, certainly lack of transparency, it has been a big issue, and the Chinese people are definitely aware of that. It would be nice to see more peer-reviewed publications of all of the 5 vaccines approved. We have seen some specifically from Sinopharm and Sinovac, and, depending on how you look at the data, it doesn't look quite as good as the Pfizer-Moderna vaccines, but if you look at preventing severe disease, at least those 2 vaccines stack up pretty much the same in terms of being really good against deaths and severe COVID disease.
And China has certainly been a leader in exporting its vaccines around the world. How is that viewed in China?
I think it's probably not viewed with as much venom as one would expect. And part of it is, I think, the Chinese people, again, looking around, haven't seen the deaths that we're still seeing in the US. Europe is in lockdown. Michigan is exploding in the US. So there isn't that sense of urgency, but people are definitely talking about it on social media, on chats. And the fact that the Chinese government is using vaccines as diplomacy is both good and bad. They've been giving it, donating it to almost 70 countries, exporting it to some, is really feeling that need for global vaccine equity, despite the pros and cons being brought up.
And just very quickly, have about 15 seconds. How do these vaccines mesh or coexist with the concepts in traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah, so I think that could be an interesting part of positioning its vaccine. Right now, it's not, it's neither hot nor cold, and I think there hasn't really been as much use of traditional Chinese medicine framework and a paradigm for really promoting the vaccine. I think that could be something that could be done even better.